podcast starting.
Right. Okay.
Well, that's kind of ominous. It says Steve is recording the call. Like, who is Steve?
I know the number of times people have been like, who's Steve and why is he watching? I'm like, I'm Steve, obviously. It's me. It's my alter ego. Okay, so first of all, Jennifer, thank you so much for being basically our guinea pig as well. As Ben and I start our inaugural sessions with all of the Silver Shamrock authors. So thank you so much for being here. I'm Janine Pipe, and Ken got in touch with me because I have booktubes, podcasts, all that kind of thing, and he said, would I be able to help out and speak to some of you guys, which obviously I said yes please straight away. And I happen to know somebody who I think would be very good at it, and he is here with us, the lovely Ben. So Ben, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure.
There are millions of people that are going to be listening to this.
Oh boy. Well, hey, my name is Ben. I am an English teacher by day, and by night, well, still doing teaching stuff, but also doing book reviews. Last year, I started a blog and Bookstagram and all of that at Reading Vicariously. And then recently, I've joined Beyond the Veil. Yeah, I got the shirts. And doing horror, reviewing horror books and comics and things like that. And have been doing some buddy reads with Janine, which is now I've basically figured out if I just kind of follow her around, she'll get me all the good stuff. So, you know, I'm just kind of clinging on to her now.
That's right. I'm like, oh, I know what I could do. I could do something with Ben. Excellent. Thank you. So, Jennifer, since you are our lovely guest, could you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, please?
Okay, well, I'm from Connecticut originally, so I moved down here to Georgia when I was 19. My dad had moved down here, and I was just at that age where it seemed like a really great idea to just leave everything I'd ever known behind and start new. So yeah. So I did that, and I've been essentially down here ever since. I mean, we've done some moves here and there throughout the state, and I lived in Las Vegas for a couple of years. But yeah, I'm still a fish out of water, but I feel like, this is my home and I really love it, and all of my family's here now. So, and I just started writing again probably 2 years ago now. It was like a midlife crisis type thing. So now that's that's what I'm doing with myself.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So whereabouts exactly do you live in Georgia? Well, not like your address or anything. That would just be weird. But...
Well, I live just outside of Atlanta, about 20 miles east in Conyers. But I did live for a while in Woodstock as well, which was like probably one of my favorite towns besides Savannah in Georgia. Yes.
So my first question has got absolutely nothing to do with this whatsoever. Have you ever seen anything to do with The Walking Dead? Because isn't that where it's filmed, in Atlanta?
It is. And I have not personally met any of the Walking Dead people. Oh. My boyfriend, though, he does like a truck spraying type thing, and they do like commercial accounts. They had people from the set, like producers and production designers, bring stuff over to like for them to work on and then send it back to the shoot. So yeah, we thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like literally one of the only things I know about Georgia is that there's loads of films that are made there, and obviously The Walking Dead being the big thing. Yeah. Is it just really cheap to film in Georgia? Is there loads of space there?
Oh. Well, there's space, and it's super cheap. Like our town, actually, we're known for having the filming set for the Originals, which is like the spinoff of the Vampire Diaries. If you've ever seen that,
yeah. Oh wow, that's cool.
It is cool. Like I used to work just down the street in the Old Town area of Conyers, and so I would walk to work, and I would always be walking through the filming, and I didn't care because I was like, I've got to go to work. You've got to get out of my way.
Walk around with people.
But I did walk through the set one day, and and I did see like Klaus, and I swear I waited on Elijah once. I don't know, but either way, he was super cute, and I was just like, just calm down, just act normal. And that young witch girl came into our bar one night to eat, and it was so funny because everyone's like, just leave her alone. Don't bother her. Let her relax.
Yeah.
Our food runner, who was a teenager, he came out with the food. The minute he saw her, he screamed at the top of his lungs and threw himself on her. We're like, well, so much for acting natural.
Yeah. So much for being
That
cool.
would be me. I'd be like, whoa! Oh, well, that's super exciting. I don't think anything's ever been filmed in my hometown ever, because it is literally the most boring place in the world. But that's amazing. I absolutely love that. And see, I've gone off track already. So that's just what I do. Sorry, that's what I do. Okay, so being professional again, and back to what we're meant to be doing. So, and in fact, actually, Ben, you're starting, aren't you?
Sure. Yeah. And actually, I wanted to talk a little bit really quickly about your life as a writer. So you mentioned a couple minutes ago that you really kind of started writing a couple of years ago. And so is being a writer something that you've kind of always wanted to do and just kind of started more recently? And then also part two is the kind of leaning maybe towards the dark fiction and horror also, something that you've always felt kind of called towards.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Well, so I say like I started writing when I had like my sort of midlife crisis, I guess. I was turning 40, and I'd been working in restaurants and bars and whatever for like 25 years, since I was 15 years old. And I just had this like moment, like this epiphany, and I was like, one night at work, I'm like looking around, like, what the hell am I even doing with my life? Like, I don't even know. So I started thinking back, like, what did I want to be? And one of the things I always wanted to be was a writer, because I was a huge reader since early childhood. My mother swears, and I don't know, if she's remembering this stuff right or whatever. She swears I was reading by myself at 3, but she does admit that maybe I was just repeating the words that she would read to me. I don't
Sure.
know. But when I was 12, because I'd been reading my whole life very avidly, my parents got me this old-fashioned typewriter, like with the ribbon and everything, and I started my first masterpiece. Like, not at all. It was a total piece of crap, but I wrote it for like 3 years, and I was just like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to be. And I really tried to focus on that through high school and everything. But once you become an adult, things change. Like, you may have dreams or whatever, but you've got to pay the bills. And so I started working. And if anyone's ever worked in a restaurant, you know that the hours are absolutely ungodly. Like, there's not really, you may have the intention of doing something else, but it's very rare that you find the time to do anything else. So my writing definitely like stopped right then and there, but I still read, and I still loved watching movies, and it's always been dark fiction. It's always been horror ever since I was a little girl. Those are the stories from the fairy tales my grandmother used to read me as a real little kid. Those are the stories I wanted to hear. And like, my mom has finally accepted that that's just the way I am. But like, for the longest time, and I still hear it sometimes, she's like, why are you like the way you are? I don't get it.
Yeah.
So
I can relate to that part. My mom, my parents are the same way. I don't understand the love for horror. And you've started, so in just the past couple of years, and we're going to get more into the books that you've written and your latest as well, but you've written several books, right, in just the past couple of years. So definitely making up for lost time, it seems like.
Yes. Well, I must have been carrying them around with me the whole time, because I swear, just really for the most part, a lot of these stories have just kind of fallen out like they're already written. And I'm like, well, where did you come from? Have I been just carrying you around like a suitcase or something?
Yeah,
But yeah, so I've been pretty fortunate in that way.
it's awesome.
Definitely. I'm just going to add something in there. do you you said about like that you find it quite easy to write stories, so do you tend to when you see like an open call, do you
Mhm.
tend to write something for that call specifically, or have you got stories that you've already got in mind and then you see a call and you think, oh, that will fit that for that call? Does that make any sense even?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, no, I mean it's kind of a combination. Like when I started writing, the summer of 2018 is when my first three books, the drafts, were written anyway. Um, I just wrote whatever came to mind. Like I didn't even start looking into publishing. I didn't start looking online or anything like that. I just wrote. And then after that, of course, I started looking because I'm like, well, I got to figure out how to sell these now that they're done. So then I started looking at stuff. And then I started really becoming a part of like the writing community, learning what I could from other people online who were doing the same thing I was. And then I started like seeing like, oh my God, there are open calls for this and that. And short stories, I've always loved reading, but it was never something I really wrote outside of school. And that's something I've only recently started doing like this past year, is writing some short stories just to see what happens. And I started at first, again, the same way. I just wrote a few short stories based on whatever popped up into my head. But now I'm starting to, because obviously I've got all these short stories now, and I'm like, well, I don't know what to do with them. Like, because you start looking through the open calls and you're like, okay, none of this fits anything. So I've started now to make it a little easier just to see if I get inspiration too. Like I'll look for an open call and read it over. And if something happens, great. And even if they don't accept it, it's fine. I mean, because a short story is awesome practice, and it might even birth another story,
That's it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not like they go off, is it? And sometimes you
Right.
can get something rejected, and then you just tweak it a little bit and it fits another call and it gets accepted for that, which is, exactly what we all
Absolutely.
do, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, cool. Right, so my actual question was, I've already gone massively off track. Okay, so when I started writing, one of the things that I was told was write what you know, which I think is what we do. We like horror, we write horror, that's what we know about. And it was actually Glenn Rolfe that told me that. He said, if there's something that you know about and you write about it, then that's going to show. It's going to seem natural when you're writing, which is obviously what you've done with this book, because you've written about somewhere that you actually know about. What has been the best piece of advice that you have received, and what knowledge would you impart onto a new writer looking to break into the genre?
Well, definitely the right what you know. That's something that's always spoken to me. But I think too, that a lot of times it's also the most misunderstood piece of writing advice, because of course, I mean, you're writing fiction, but nobody's really writing stories about like, this was my day from point A to point B, waking up and going to the cubicle and doing this or that. I mean, that's not what it means, writing what you know. But like, you always want to imply, like, you want to inject some part of yourself, even if it's not like obvious, into whatever story you're writing, to add authenticity. Because if you have the authenticity, people will love your story and they'll read and see what happens. So I definitely love that piece of advice. But another piece I really like, which I discovered maybe last year or so, even though I'm sure it's obviously much older than that. But there was a quote from Toni Morrison, I believe, and it was something along the lines of, if there's a story that you want to read, but it's not out there yet, you need to be the one to write it. And that's kind of exactly what I've been doing with all of my stories. I've been a lifelong fan of horror and other genres. So if I feel like there's a story that's maybe something I've wanted to read but never quite happened, I'm like, well, I might as well write what I would have wanted. And if other people like it, cool.
Definitely, that's it. And that's the two best pieces of advice that I've had as well: the write what you know and write what you would read. Because if you're not interested in it, why are you writing it? And I know that's different if you're writing to market because you're trying to make a living out of it and all that kind of stuff, but otherwise I'm exactly the same. I think to myself, I want to write a story about a werewolf on a train, and I wrote a story about a werewolf on a train. Why not?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and even people who write to market, I mean, obviously, like you said, it's a good way to try to make a living by appealing to the masses. But even then, I mean, the best writers are going to find some sliver in that market concept that speaks to them, and that's what's going to give them passion. And again, add the authenticity to their story, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's me next as well on our list. So this one is specific to us. Have you faced any obstacles being a woman of horror, especially as horror is very, well, it was often thought of as a man genre? And how do you foresee us overcoming that challenge?
Well, I've only started writing professionally for the past couple of years, but I absolutely, as a horror reader my whole life, obviously I've seen that the authors that dominate the genre have been men for the most part, which, you know, whatever, that's like for every genre, right? I mean, like when you think about like this books you had to read in school, most of them were white male books. But occasionally you get a woman thrown in there, you might get a person of color thrown in there. I think nowadays, though, it's definitely widening in all genres, especially horror, though. And I appreciate it both as a reader and now as a writer. As for myself, I think I came into writing in horror at the right time because, as far as I know, I've not been like somehow hampered by being a woman in the horror genre. I mean, you never know what happens behind closed doors with rejections or whatever. I don't know. But I don't feel like I have been. So that's a good thing. And I really feel like this is the time that, you know, that I could, you know, if I'm going to do anything with my books, with my writing, this would be the time to do it because it's so open now, or at least people are trying to make it open, you know, so which I appreciate.
Definitely. Yay. Thank you very much. Okay, Ben, over to you.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about your upcoming book, Clementine's Awakening from Silver Shamrock, that's coming out soon. Can you tell us, you know, without obviously giving too much away, tell us a little bit about the book and then kind of, you know, where the idea for it came from, some of the inspiration behind it?
Yes. Okay. So I started like this was the second book in my writing spree of 2018. This was the second book I wrote. And I was working in the restaurant, a restaurant that I should mention we all believe to be haunted, first off. So, so like I was thinking to myself, I really love ghost stories. That's one of my favorite parts of the horror genre. So I'm like, I should write a ghost story. So I'm thinking, well, why don't I also write a ghost story? Because I've always also wanted to write kind of a restaurant themed book because even though it's one of the most popular jobs to have in this country and in the world, uh, I don't think there's a lot of like people really making fiction about it, you know, to kind of highlight the very real horrors that occur in that kind of job. So, like, if you've ever worked in a restaurant or a bar, you absolutely know what I mean. You know, it's a wonderful place, but it can also be a terrifying place. So, I wanted to kind of combine all that together. And as I started writing, you know, I figured I could do like a Georgia story. I'm in Georgia, why not? And I'm like, well, I should do Savannah because I love Savannah, and you know, everyone says it's the most haunted city, and I've gone ghost hunting there. So, and then I just started thinking too, like, you know, if I'm gonna do all that, then I might as well just make the restaurant haunted and make the girl here and do all that. And I don't know, it just kind of went from there. And then I realized too, like, you know, I first visited Savannah when I first moved to Georgia, so like 20 years ago. And I started really wondering, I'm like, maybe I started even building this story back then, and I just didn't know it. Because again, so much of the stuff that I was writing that just came out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere, I'm like, you know, this just didn't happen by accident. This is stuff I must have been thinking and mulling over in my subconscious for a while, like my first impressions of this beautiful city. So yeah, it was quite, it was, I don't even want to like, it's kind of a joke, but not really. But it was almost like kind of a mystical process of writing it, because I feel like I really dug something out of myself, and resurrected a part of myself from long ago that I'd almost forgotten. So yeah,
Oh,
but yeah, I love this story. I'm so excited to see it out, and I really hope that other people love it too.
yeah, definitely. When you're talking about the process too, like, did you have to? I know you visited Savannah and you probably visited several times maybe during the writing of the book. Did you find yourself doing a lot of research into the city? Did you do a lot of the writing while you were there, or kind of your that part of the process? What was it like, bringing Savannah into your book?
Well, I did not actually go. I should have, and I wanted to, but again, restaurant life, I did not have the time.
Hmm.
So I did not make any trips to Savannah while writing. But, as I love the city so much, I've loved it for 20 years. I started like to research. I started pulling up all my favorite pieces of the city to kind of look over, refresh myself. Like Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. It's probably the first nonfiction book I ever wrote or read, because I was like, who reads nonfiction for fun? That's stupid. Until you read this book, and then you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't even believe. And so I read that again, and I watched some movies, and YouTube, of course, is so helpful to like, hey, this is my walking tour of this or that, and I'm like, I remember walking there, and it kind of helped put me in the mood, put me in the setting again. But I try to be very careful with my research as always, because you want to get yourself in the right headspace again, so you can envision what you're writing. But at the same time, and I find this a lot in fantasy writing too, with like friends I know, if you get too caught up in the world building, you kind of lose track of the story itself. So you really have to be careful in balancing it, so you're not doing too much. You still want to stay in your world, and
Hmm.
just make sure you use a little bit of outside flavor to kind of enliven it, but not too much.
And Janine, definitely feel free to jump in at any time.
That's
I'm
fine.
thinking of more questions now. I'm
Yeah,
trying
I
not
was
to
going to
ask too
say
many.
you went off piste and off of the
Uh,
order, so you can take me through me.
um, can you speak just briefly, when you're talking about needing to not just focus on the world building, even though that's important,
Mhm.
but also, centering it around these characters. What are some of the characters that are in this book?
Well, Clementine for me is a very relatable character, because she's this young girl. She's had a very hard life, and with an addict mother, not a lot of money, and isolated because of that, because of the way her life has been. So she goes from this isolation instantly into the one job that throws you around people and chaos, like probably more than any job. So it's a huge change for her. And I definitely related to that. Like, I mean, my first serving job, I was in high school, so it was different. But oh God, I remember being so scared. Like, I know I can do this, but I have to talk to people. I have to be on display all the time. And it's a really hard thing to wrap your mind around. So I wanted to, kind of use someone like her, because I think someone like her is a great entrance into that world, and why it can be so scary for someone new. But I also wanted to show, because your years in any kind of industry, you meet lots of characters. Like, I've met so many cool people over the past 25 years working in this industry. And I mean, I didn't like necessarily, but you know how it is when you're writing. I didn't necessarily like copy any character. But there are definitely like echoes of people I've known and loved and or hated very much in the story, because again, you pull from yourself, whether you realize it or not, to add that authenticity and add that flavor. So, but yeah, again, for me, I want the world building there, because especially in a Southern Gothic novel, the setting is also very much a character. So you want to have a rich setting, you want to have detail there. But for me, I've always loved the characters more in a story, so I try to focus more on them instead of getting sidetracked. So that's where I put a lot of my writing energy, was making very believable I hope believable and relatable characters. Like I know that some of them definitely moved me, but I also cry at commercials, so I don't know, maybe.
So
I hope
a
that
lot of
translates
empathy.
to others.
And one character, just really quickly, and because I think there's a character in the book that is the ghost of a former slave. Is that correct? Okay. Did you feel, in creating this character who was a former slave, did you feel that you needed to be a certain approach that a certain way, or make sure you portrayed this character in a sensitive manner? Or is there anything that you did to kind of think through that particular character?
Absolutely. Well, Rosemary, who is also on the cover with Clementine, again, I knew I wanted a ghost because I wanted to write a ghost story. And I also knew I did not want necessarily, I mean, even though there ends up being an antagonistic ghost, I wanted one of the ghosts to be good. I wanted the one that Clementine meets to become her friend. So Rosemary is the ghost of a former slave, and she's a teenager. She's a little bit younger than Clementine, but of course, probably in some ways older, too, given the experiences that she would have had. Savannah is one of those places, everyone talks about the hauntings and the ghosts and all that. What sometimes gets mentioned and sometimes doesn't is, Savannah was also the biggest port in the United States at the time, hundreds of years ago. And it was also one of the centers of the slave trade, and when you go to this city, they now have like monuments, and they do try to incorporate that more into the tours and stuff, which is great, because I think very much that that's one of those things that shouldn't be forgotten in our history, because we obviously want to respect what those people suffered. And if you're writing a story about it, you want to be sensitive, So I did not want to necessarily go off on a world building tangent and, take Rosemary through. She's already a ghost. She already gets murdered. So I was like, do I really want to add on top of that this horrible backstory of slavery? And I did not want to. So that was a choice on my part. And at the same time, I think it's also respectful because stories like that, I mean, it comes from, a certain culture that, not that you necessarily have to be of that culture to write a story about slavery, but I think unless you're really going to do 100% like to represent that world as best you can and research it and all that, you really shouldn't mess around with it just casually, like as
Mhm.
a couple of throwaway lines in fiction. So I think the
Mm-hmm.
best way I could be respectful to Rosemary was I did not tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, the story is through Clementine's point of view. It's a first person story. So again, I didn't want to get sidetracked from that either by going off into a whole side narrative
Mm-hmm.
about Rosemary's past. I tried to balance there's a few mentions where you kind of know, like you sense that there's something more to her tale, but I really focused on how Clementine could perceive her and
Mm-hmm.
what she might have revealed about her story.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, yeah, it sounds like the perfect balance. So you say between making sure it's in there because it's not something that you can just wash over, but
Mhm.
being respectful and knowing that perhaps that wasn't the right time and right place to go more into it. And it's especially if it's from a first person, then
Mhm.
unless you were specifically asking those kind of things as well. I think that sounds like you've done it perfectly well, definitely.
I hope
Um,
so.
I'm going to jump in with have you seen a ghost?
I think so.
Can you tell
Do I?
us? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like, do I know for 100% sure it was something real and not my wildly active imagination? I don't know. But yes, I think I have. Like there's just been all sorts of stuff like when I was a kid, kids tend to see or hear things maybe that other people don't. And they say it's like a part of your childhood, like, kids' brains just work differently. So I definitely believe that as a kid I saw and heard stuff. But even as an adult, like I lived for a time in a reportedly haunted house when I moved to Las Vegas with my best friend. And That was so creepy. Like, I swear I had to sleep with my headphones on and music playing really loud because you could hear stuff through the house all night long. And one night, I had the light on because I slept with the light on too. I don't even care. I slept with the light on, but I had my eyes closed because I was like, I felt something in the room, and I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna like drive myself insane and look and see whatever the hell's there. So I had my eyes closed, but you know how like when you're looking at a light and if your eyes are closed and sometimes things are moving in front of your face and you could see the shadows. So that was happening. So I'm like, well, there's something like right above my face, but I don't want to know what it is. So and then in the
Whoa.
restaurant too, in the restaurant I worked at, it was a Mexican restaurant. So the workers there, most of them being Mexican, they had named who they thought the ghost was. They named her Abuela. So that was her name. And so they started telling me stories about her, like when I moved into the restaurant, to work. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. It's just an old building. Like, you guys are just making up stories. This isn't for real. And, a few nights you stay there really late at night to close. Sometimes things move. Sometimes you hear footsteps where there shouldn't be footsteps or boards creaking. So I started believing, especially when I started managing there, and I would really be spending a lot of time off hours alone. And I swear one time I heard someone whispering in my ear. Was it extreme exhaustion? I don't know. But I'm just, whether it's real or not, like something in me does believe like that there's something going on. I just don't know what.
Oof, that's creepy. See, I believe in all that kind of stuff, and I believe that I have seen ghosts as well as a child and as a teenager, but it still freaks the hell out of me to hear other people talk about it as well.
Yeah,
Okay, and I'm going to jump in with another quick question, an ad hoc one here about, because literally just before we came onto the Skype, I was talking to Jill from Candisha Press, and
Mhm.
she told me that we were going to be lucky enough to have you in our volume 4. So yay!
Yay.
Very
I
excited to hear about that.
Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, I loved that story so much. And I have loved Candisha Press since I read Graveyard Smash, which, by the way, Janine, oh my God, like one of your stories in there was one of my favorites. The Invitation. I don't want to give out spoilers because, of course, it's a short story that would be easy to do. But the plot twist, excellent. Did not see that coming. Yeah, it was really great.
Thank
So if
you.
we're gonna be in one together, like that's just awesome. That's a dream come true.
Definitely. Yay. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, right, back to topic. So my next question is, and you've kind of really touched on all of this anyway, but what does Southern Gothic mean to you, and why did you choose to write that particular, you've said about that you wanted to write something about the ghosts and everything, so why did you choose to write about Southern Gothic?
Well, I've always loved Gothic literature. So like we were talking about there's not a lot of women that you get to read in horror and all this growing up. Well, I think the first few women horror authors that I did get to read in school, they were writing Gothic literature. So that became an early love of mine anyway, like these tragic romances with some sort of supernatural element, and like there's usually some crumbling estate and foggy moors and whatever else. So I've always like been drawn to that kind of story anyway. And I think that all of my books have some element of that. But yeah, for this one, like I said, I wanted to write in Georgia. And so I just kind of set it there, but I didn't really realize because I'd not read too many Southern Gothic novels. I didn't really realize at the time that that's what I was writing.
yeah.
But when you start querying and you want to try to find like comp titles, right,
Yeah.
to help sell your story. So I started looking up comp titles and I'm like, well, these are all Southern Gothic as well. So I started thinking to myself, what makes my story Southern Gothic? But I think what it's all that stuff from before, like you've got the tragic romance, the atmosphere, and all this and supernatural elements. But I think with the Southern Gothic, what's different is you also kind of want to combine the real, very real life horrors that occurred in the South, which the South, even though they were one of the first to move like through it and beyond it, I think because this was like ground zero for like some of the most horrible stuff in American history. I think that the scars are still very fresh, you know, so it's something that it's always kind of lurking under the surface down here, even if people are moving forward, they are trying. And I think Atlanta, especially, I mean, given other places I've visited in this country, other places I've seen, I mean, they're doing a really good job more than some other places to really move forward, you know, which is awesome as it should be.
Mhm.
But it's very hard. This was only a generation ago, you know, that a lot of this stuff was happening. Like my mother would tell me when she was a kid, like about watching race riots on TV and stuff. So it's not like this was 100 years ago for that stuff. You know, it's still
Mhm.
something we have to work on. And I think that's why Southern Gothic works because it blends the real with the supernatural in a way that's extra scary, you know?
Definitely. Yep.
Mhm.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm excited. I love Gothic as well and Southern Gothic stories, so it's very exciting. And then this particular one, so your other books, were those self-published, the other books that you've written so far? Did you
Yes,
self-publish those?
they weren't intended to be. Well, the first one was not intended to be self-published. It ended up being self-published because the publisher had previously purchased it. They had gone under, but everything was done. So I was like, well, you know, I didn't intend to be a self-publisher, but if everything's done, I might as well try it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, I mean, it's a great idea. I definitely don't regret doing it, but at the same time, I'm like, I kind of wish I'd researched just a little bit more because the whole reason I'd held off from self-publishing, I'd seen like through people talking about it on Twitter. I'm like, wow, this sounds like a lot of work, you know, and you got to know a lot of different things.
Yep.
I'm like, am I
Yeah.
ready to take that on? I don't think so. But then I did, and I've been kind of learning as I go. But there's definitely pros and cons to doing self-publishing versus traditional publishing. But I'm really happy that I've tried both, and I'm
Yeah.
enjoying both in different ways. Mhm.
Hmm. Cool. Very cool. And yeah, and this one, definitely pros and cons to both. This one's coming out with Silver Shamrock Publishing.
Mhm.
And so I was just curious what that's been like, being able to kind of work with them, and have them kind of help you along the way, you know, in getting this out into the world.
Well, they have been great. Ken McKinley and Kenneth Kane, they are just, well, they're horror fans themselves and they're writers as well. So when you add all that together, of course they're like dream people to work with because they know exactly what you're going through. They know what you need. And you know, because they do it for themselves. And I had only discovered Silver Shamrock. I didn't know much about the indie horror community at all until I started writing, you know, because it was mostly mainstream horror. You know, when you go to a bookstore, that's what you see. You don't see like
Mhm.
all these other small presses, at least not the bookstores that I, you know, was had to go to. But you know, once I started discovering them, they were one of the first presses that I started reading. And when I was getting ready again to send out Clementine's Awakening, I'm like, well, they're my first choice. So, because I really think based on like some of the other stories I read, I'm like, I think this would work. So but yeah, they've from the editing, from helping with marketing, from just being someone to talk to, and of course having Keenan Patrick for the cover. Oh my God, he is
Yeah.
so awesome.
He's
So
amazing. Yeah.
he's
His artwork is
amazing.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yes. So I've been super happy with the entire experience for sure, and I highly recommend it.
That's awesome. That's awesome that they were like your first pick and you got them as well. That's so cool.
Yeah, I didn't expect it because, you know, I've well, when I first started querying in general, again, based on fabulous Twitter writing advice, which you know you got to take with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Everyone's like everyone's like, "Oh, you need to reach out to agents first." Like that's what everyone does. So I'm like, "Oh, okay. I'm going to look up agents." Yeah, any horror writer who like goes querying agents first, good freaking luck, because they are not looking for you. You know, horror is not the top selling genre, and they're business people, so it makes perfect sense, you know, unless you've got like the most awesome writing style and story, like you're the upcoming Stephen King, an agent's not going to touch you.
Yeah.
But indie horror is where it's at for the horror genre. So if you are looking to get your story out there, I definitely recommend going through small presses first. Like there's so many of them. There's so many good ones putting out amazing work, and they're going to listen to you. Like they're going to give your story a chance. And even if they don't, obviously they don't accept everyone and everything, but most of them are pretty decent people where even if they don't accept you, they're going to give you some awesome feedback to help
Yeah,
you get your story ready to try again, you know?
absolutely. And that's one of the things I really like about Ken as well. I was writing, well, it's on the back burner at the moment, but a vampire, and that's actually a spin-off from The Invitation. So it's
Nice.
more of Amber's story. And when I was talking to Ken, he was saying to me, you know, send it along when it's finished. Even if I don't take it, I will give you some advice of what to do to make it better, to, you know, to be able to put it to someone else. And
Mm-hmm.
he's just that kind of guy. He is just really helpful. He knows this stuff, but he wants to share that knowledge. And
Mm-hmm.
I think another thing with a lot of the indie presses, a hell of a lot of the people that own the indie presses, as you said, are writers themselves. So they know exactly what they're looking for, but they also know how hard it is to break out into, you know, to get that first
Mm-hmm.
acceptance and whatnot. And they're the kind of people that they just want to help. Okay, it's their business, but also they want to help, you know, get
Exactly.
people and do that. Yeah.
Well, because they're fans of the genre, you know, and that's so important. You know, yeah, it's great to have a business person on your side because, I mean, obviously you got to make some return for the work you put in. I mean, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But at the same time, the person who's going to be the best advocate for you is someone who believes in the work you're doing because they love it. You know, not necessarily like they love you above all, but they love like that genre of work, you know? And horror needs more people speaking up for it because I am so sorry. I know it may not be the most commercially popular of the genres, but there is horror in everything. I don't care what people say. Like there's so many in movies, in books, in whatever else, in TV shows. It is everywhere. So people will tell you, you know, oh, I don't like horror. I don't read stuff like that. I don't watch stuff like that. It's like, well, yeah, you do. You just
Mhm.
don't realize you do, but you do.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. It might not have the label on it, but it's still horror.
Mhm.
Yep.
Right, right. It's not all, I mean, it's not all big boobed sorority girls running from a knife wielding maniac, you know, there's a lot of other stuff going on. And
That's
not that
fun
there's
too, though.
anything right. Those are fun stories too. But that's only one sliver, you know, one tiny little bit, you
Yeah.
know.
Okay, so my next question is, it sounds like you've got sort of your finger in lots of different pots and things. Can you tell us anything else that you've got due out either this year or next year, or just things that you're working on?
Yes. Well, this year, it's going to be a pretty crazy year. And I feel like I've said this like the last 2 years, but it's like it keeps getting like crazier and crazier, but you know, that's okay. It's super fun. I've got obviously Clementine's Awakening is coming out at this time, it's 10 days from now. So that'll be really big, really exciting. And in the spring, the first book that I wrote is going to come out next. And that's called The Mother We Share. And it's sort of a YA slash NA. I mean, it's part of a series and it's definitely not going to stay in YA. But you know, the story is sort of a coming of age dark fantasy horror story that again is somewhat based off of like a real life funny thing. So my sister, she is so crazy. She likes to tell I have two sisters, they're twins. This one, she has the kids and she likes to tell the kids scary stories. So she told them this one scary story years ago, and it was kind of hilarious, even though the kids were terrified. But that's another thing that kind of sat in my mind. I've got these twin sisters. She would tell them stories about evil twins, and that's where this story kind of came. Like the seed germinated and sprouted from there. So I'm really looking forward to finally seeing this book out as well. And that'll be from Rhetoric Askew Publishing in the spring. Then I've also got this another sort of series coming out. The second book will be in September. But again, like I had mentioned earlier, sometimes you write the book you want to read. Well, one of the things I like, along with my regular horror, is sometimes I like some paranormal romance. However, I didn't necessarily, I don't always necessarily find like the story I want in those stories. So I just kind of figured one day, I'm like, why don't I write the one that I want to read? So it kind of it kind of sprouted from there as just an experiment, but it's a really fun series. And the second book will be She Who Destroys. That's out in September. And then, of course, we'll be in our Candisha Press Volume 4 together, as of yet untitled. That'll be really exciting. And I've got some other stuff that may or may not be picked up, so we'll see what happens with that. But it's a lot for sure.
It's amazing. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exciting.
Yeah. So paranormal romance. Are we talking like Twilight?
Oh no. Well, because that's part of the thing, right? It's like now I like the Twilight books, sure. I liked them when they came out. But and I like the movies because Robert Pattinson is, Robert Pattinson. But you know, I one of the things that really drives me nuts about paranormal romance is I like the idea of monsters and humans and all that, but why do the monsters have to become like nice to be sexy? Like, shouldn't they still be like scary? You know? And I don't really have any creatures in this story. Like the humans are the creatures because the people are bad enough. They don't need to be monsters. But it's like, why would you romanticize? It's better when they're scary, I think. So, and sometimes the person who's scariest, I don't want to give away spoilers, isn't always the person who seems like they're going to be the scariest, It's
Mhm.
my code word for this novel series is witches versus Satanists because it's like those are the two groups kind of battling each other. But I like the fact that they're not like sugar coated and they're real people, and some of them are nice, some of them are not. But I just I don't really care for like the sparkly vampire type thing. I think that's why Dracula is still like my favorite vampire book because he's still a jerk and he's ugly and he's mean, and that's cool. What's wrong with that?
So I'm intrigued. What other paranormal things that are part of the romance? Are we talking like snogging werewolves and stuff?
Well,
It's like move on, but I want to know.
well, the witch, as you'll find in the first book, the witch has some problems keeping her emotions reined in, and that's linked to her power. So she's kind of, she's the protagonist, she's the main character, but she doesn't mean to be a bad person, but sometimes she lets her emotions get out of control and it's tied to her power. So sometimes she does some pretty horrific and or stupid things as a result. So hopefully by book 2, she learns to control that a little bit more before she like further ruins her whole life.
Okay. So it's not like humans and monsters coming together.
Like
That's
the
what, in my mind, paranormal romance is like it's usually like a woman falling in love with like the creature from the Black Lagoon or something. It's not that kind of thing.
Oh no, not this one.
No,
It's yes, but
well, because this stuff.
Yeah. But it's so funny you should mention that because again, if you Google some of the books that are out there and or try to read some of them, I mean, some of them are really, really amazing. Like there's this I think she's somewhat independent. I don't think she's like published by like a big five person or anything. Laura Thalassa, she's got some amazing paranormal romances. And it's like fairies and humans, but like her fairies are pretty nasty. So like they're not like, cutesy, sparkly, happy things, And so I appreciate that. And her stories are very inventive. But then you get like in the genre, you'll find ones like reverse harem, werewolf, fairy, vampire romance, and it's like, what the heck, what am I even reading? I don't even know anymore. Like, this is the point in my life where I've actually started putting down books. I never used to, but I've started actually not finishing certain books because I'm like, I can't. I've got like a list a mile long of perfectly awesome books that I have to get to. I don't even know where I am right now.
This is our job as reviewers as well. Sometimes you're like, why am I reading this? But as well, sometimes I keep going back to, I'm like obsessed now with this paranormal. They tend to be quite erotic usually as well, though, don't they?
Oh
like
yeah.
Some of the ones that I've like looked at, like when you said like Googled stuff, I'm like, they do what?
Oh, you should read some of them. Well, and some are better than others. I like to think I tried not to go too overboard. Because again, I try to focus on the story and all that. I did have a reviewer say that that I made him clutch his pearls. I was like, that is so awesome. Thank you so much. Because it's kind of like the equivalent of like someone saying, oh, I hated your character, but I couldn't stop reading, or oh my God, I stayed up all night with your book because I loved this or that. So it was really awesome. I appreciate it. But still, I haven't let my parents read this or anything. So
Oh, that's hilarious. Right, we'll come off of that topic now. So who are your own favorite writers? Who are your sort of like go-to? Who's on your bookshelves?
well, definitely. I mean, well, Stephen King was my first horror author that I ever read. I really only care for like the earlier works, though. I've tried to read some of the newer ones, and they just don't mesh with me as well. But The Shining, I read that when I was 9, and I haven't looked back since. Like that's just such an amazing book still. But I also really liked when I was a teenager. I loved Anne Rice. I loved V.C. Andrews, and it was always darker fiction. Like I didn't want the stories that were like happy and happy endings. I'm not necessarily a fan of that. Even I love fantasy as well too, but the fantasy I love has always been darker fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, of course. But I've read books uh, like, well, I mean that's Stephen King still, but like the Dark Tower series, I love that. And some of like the grimdark type fantasy, like Game of Thrones, which I'll never know the end to, but I love it, like the grittier, the nastier, that's what I like. And I don't know why, like I don't know why. I think it's something of any kind of dark fiction and horror. I think the only reason we really are drawn to it as much as we are is it's a really great emotional vent, and it's you can be troubled and you can read something. It's like when you watch like those horrible reality shows on TV, like the really bad ones, and you're like, wow, at least my life's not like that, you know? You get like that sort of feeling. But there's also something to be said for like reading something that scares you, and it helps you not be scared because you've got a safe space. The book is a safe space. You can read about the monster, you can fight the monster in the safe space, and then something in your brain is like, okay, I'm ready. So when I run into this vampire in the future or this actor,
I know what to do.
Do
Is
you
there
feel
anything? Sorry,
go
Ben,
ahead.
go ahead. Go on, you.
Um, do you feel like you, in some of your stories or your characters, that you channel some of your own kind of fears or misgivings or anything like that into
Oh,
them as well, as a way to put them in a safe place or wrestle with them or exercise them, or whatever it is?
absolutely. Well, and I think too that's the thing that a horror writer can really do well when they're writing their story is, uh, again, write what scares you. If it doesn't scare you, if you're not reading it and like having a nightmare from it, then maybe you need to revisit it. The first story I wrote, oh, hello. Hello.
Sorry. This is my daughter Margot.
How are you?
Say
Hi.
Oh, she's delicious.
But yeah, the first story I wrote, um, I had a big scene coming right up at the beginning. So I was like, well, how am I going to write this scary scene? I don't know. So I started imagining it in my head, and it was kind of also based on a ghost story from that haunted house in Las Vegas. So I'm picturing it, I'm putting myself in that place, and it started like unfolding. And then as I'm writing the scene, I had to stop, and I'm like, oh, I need to turn the light on, or I'm going to probably sleep with the light on tonight because it was really late at night. And I was like, maybe this is too much. And I'm like, no, I think that's probably perfect. Because if I'm feeling like this, hopefully my audience will have a snippet of that feeling, like just a teeny little bit,
Definitely. Yeah. If you've scared yourself, then definitely you've
That's a
done
good
half
sign,
the
right?
But yeah, it's always something that unsettles you. Like, and even if you don't might not do it on purpose,
job.
like there's a lot of bad stuff that I've survived. That doesn't mean I'm gonna write about it like just straight. That's what metaphor is for. That's what the monster is for, because sometimes it's really hard to write about stuff like that. So you've got to like jazz it up with something else.
It can be incredibly cathartic then, can't it? I imagine that some of the people that get killed in your books are those nasty customers that didn't tip you over the years. Right, I'm gonna get you now.
Yes, there was definitely some fun writing the scenes that I wrote. So yeah, I don't want to give spoilers, but I did have my sister when I was first reading it. She read parts of it and she was like, "Oh my God, Jen, I can't believe you just did that." I'm like, "Right? That's awesome." I know, but that's so bad. You're not supposed to wish these things upon people, but that's why we don't wish them. That's why we write them, and it's all make believe, right?
Okay, it's
Exactly.
completely different.
Yep.
What I was going to ask is there anything that is too far for you? Is there anything that you won't write about or touch on in your work?
Um, Probably I've never been a fan of like extreme torture, rape, stuff like that. I mean, I think especially as a woman, you know, y- there's things that we've all experienced as women that you feel obliged almost to write about it because again, it's part of that cathartic process. Like I've been through this, I've got to write about it a little bit, and I've got to try to like get it out of myself. But as far as like an extreme scene of something like that, I just don't think I could do it, because it would just be too hard to handle. And as far as like torture scenes, like that's one of the quickest things that'll make me cover my eyes in a movie or on TV is like the fingernails getting pulled out and like crazy. I can't do stuff like that. I
I
can
love
maybe
that.
I can watch it sometimes, but like I can't like watch it or read it. Like I need breaks. I need help because
Right.
that's
Yeah.
almost too much for me, especially when it's well done. Like if it's crap, obviously you can watch it and you're like, oh, whatever, it's just gore. But if they are doing their job right, that gore can be very disturbing. So
Yeah, bring on the gore, I say. I love
yeah.
it. And it's funny because I've found that my stories have got more and more extreme as I've got more and more comfortable with like my writing. Again, there are things obviously that, as you say, like with raping, that kind of stuff, that's a whole different kettle of fish that we don't need to go into. But with the extreme and like the torture and the blood and the guts and all that kind of stuff, yeah, love it.
Yes. Well, and sometimes it really is awesome, right? Like again, if they're doing their job right. Like I really enjoyed the first Saw movie.
Mm.
I did not enjoy the rest of them. I thought it was just, I don't know, it felt kind of cheap. But the first one, like I was, just so unsettled when he's in that room and like, okay, you've got to cut your foot off. And I'm like, oh God, no, he's gonna do it. Oh my God, he's gonna do
I was like,
it. I love that. Like that was really well done.
yeah. Okay. Well, we've kind of exhausted all of the things that we wanted to talk to you about. Is there anything else? First of all, Ben, is there anything else that you wanted to ask that has come up through the conversation? Or
I don't think so.
okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Jennifer, is there anything else that you wanted to add? Anything that that we haven't touched on?
I think I'm good. I hope I haven't rambled too much, but I just get so excited talking about all this stuff.
Yeah, we're excited to have you.
Yeah, definitely. Jennifer, where can people find you?
Well, I have a website. It's jennifersoucy.com, and that's got all my links to everything else. So all my books are for sale on Amazon for sure. So all the links are there for that to make it easier. Plus, I've got some blogs I really need to get back to writing more of, because you know how it is. You start writing blogs, and it's like, oh, this is so much fun. And then like a year later, you're like, I didn't write anything for a year. So I swear I'm trying. I'm on, Goodreads too, because I love reviewing books, very amateurly myself, but I do enjoy giving something back because I'm a fan. I want other people to be fans. So, but yeah, and I'm very active on Twitter and Instagram, so definitely look for me on there too. My tag is usually Banshee Tales, except Instagram is the real Genoa, and that's one of my childhood nicknames, and I had to put that there for that's a whole other long story. But yes, all my links are on my website.
Awesome. And we'll make sure that when this video goes up, I'll make sure that all the links are down below and all that kind of professional stuff that I will struggle to do, but we'll make it work one way or another. Well, it's been absolutely wonderful having you today. Thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you, Janine, Ben. You guys have been awesome. It's such a pleasure to be able to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, too.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.